services, food and beverages, and I am in venture studio sphere with a number of platforms. In economic zones, I did 10 years of economic zones development. With Jebel Ali Free Zone, I headed economic zones development for the region, and I also headed global sales. There are a few books that I developed. If you are interested in any of them, one is called Economic Zones, The Essentials. One is Sustaining Family Businesses. And the third one is a novel I just launched a couple of months ago. Took me 10 years to develop, but went out. It's nice. It's very different than what I usually do. So, but yeah, it has been actually extremely successful, contrary to my belief. So that was okay. Economic zones. There are more than 7,000 of them. Almost 2,500 of them are in China. They contribute more than 100 million jobs. They contribute almost $3.5 trillion in exports, which is circa 20% of global trade in goods. And there are many types of them. So you would hear free zones, special economic zones, trading zones, logistical zones, industrial parks, all kind of different financial zones, technology. So they all fall under what a lot of people call economic zones. Why do you need an economic zone? Most countries go for economic zones as a tool to solve a problem. And usually they wouldn't want to do changes in the laws and regulations of the main economy before they understand how can they solve a problem and try it out like a lab, like a testing sphere in a confined area or a controlled area. This is why you see today, for example, in the UAE, and let's start with Dubai. The first economic zones that was established was Jebel Ali Free Zone in Dubai. That is probably one of the first ones in the Middle East, actually. The problem they had, and they wanted to try and solve, is that they built this big port, but shipping lines were not coming to use the port. They realized that going after the shipping lines was not going to do it. They were incentivizing those shipping lines right, left, and center, but nobody would come. Only to realize that they need to bring the customers of the shipping lines to Dubai, or otherwise they will never come. So in order to entice their customers, the customers of the shipping lines, to come and set shop and have warehouses, they needed to create something called a free zone, whereby those companies are not subject to taxes, are not subject to custom, can own 100% the business, whereby inland, the law at the time did not allow foreign ownership. And once they did that, a substantial foreign population started moving to Dubai. And the customers came, and then the shipping lines came, and then it became a snowball effect, basically. Bring in shipping lines, customers come, bring customers, shipping lines come, and so on and so forth. But then there's a small community of foreigners started establishing around Jebel Ali Free Zone in a village called Jebel Ali Village. You probably passed by that. That was the first foreign community in the UAE, actually. And then the government realized that, okay, this foreign community would like to have entertainment, they'd like to have schools, and they'd like to have hospitals. And this is how everything started in the UAE. And now in the UAE alone, there's almost 40 now, 30 something economic zones. They are everywhere. But then the UAE started allowing foreign ownership to be inland. So the trial worked. And they are taking now things they've learned out of how economic zones worked and bringing it into the main economy. Now, economic zones have many purposes. I get approached a lot by countries saying, we'd like to have an economic zone. And the first question that I'll ask is that, what is the problem that you have and you would like to solve? Most of them will want the star and the skies, and they want to solve all of their problems using an economic zone, not realizing that economic zones are only a test lab. And I would always ask them to give me one answer as a priority. And they will always struggle to give me an answer. They struggle so much so that they get pissed off. Because the question then asked, and since you are studying mostly economics, are you after jobs? Are you after knowledge? Are you after hard currency? Are you after revenue? What are you after as a country? What's your number one priority? All of them will say all of the above. And it doesn't work like that. And since you are in economics, you will understand the case. And let me use Jabal Ali as an example again. Jabal Ali wanted to attract the customers of shipping lines. And accordingly, they've designed a law that will attract the customers of the shipping lines. And what would have attracted them was 100% foreign ownership and no restriction on employment. So they didn't have to recruit locals. Why? Because jobs was not a problem. Population was so small of Emiratis. So jobs was not really a problem for them to try and solve. The case will not be in many other areas like India, for example, or Tanzania or Ethiopia. You want jobs. Yeah? Because you have a jobs problem. So number one concern will be a job oriented economic zone. No, I'll give you no taxes, I'll give you foreign ownership, but you have to employ locals. Some would actually want knowledge. Yeah. So they'll design their economic zones so much so that they would like to attract tech companies that have technology, and they'll not only reduce costs on them, they will actually give them money to come to the country because they want that technology to be in the country and that the locals start learning and getting that knowledge in the country. At times, it's mainly about trying to get hard currency, meaning export. So a country that has a lot of raw materials, a lot of cheap resources, that wants to add value in the country so that then when they sell, they get more value back for the products. So if I'm in Brazil, for example, or I'm in Argentina, where I have a lot of resources, yeah, I don't want to be selling those resources cheaply as a commodity. I would like to add value to those resources, create products, and export the products. So with that, I'll encourage companies that can add value to raw material, and with that, I bring knowledge, and I'm able to sell products at a higher price and make money coming back. So there are a lot of benefits: attract FDI, create jobs, increase exports, stimulus economic development, technology, and so forth. Now, what are the factors that impact, how successful economic zones could be or would be? Most economic zones, and I would claim more than 85 of them, are failures, depending on how do you look at the matrices. How do you gauge them? And most of them, in my opinion, have failed due to bureaucracy. For them to be successful, of course, location matters, infrastructure matters, incentives matters, support, government support, skilled workforce, and linkage with local economy. You get a lot of these economic zones that are not allowed to deal with the local economy. And I see it done in many countries, and in my opinion, these are big mistakes. They fear that the local economy, local traders would move into the free zones to take advantage. And they think in a very limited way, not realizing that the money is still in the country. So there's a philosophy that I always encourage, is that let people, say, for example, develop real estate, because that real estate will stay there regardless of where the money goes. The asset is there. It's gonna stay there. It's not. If they move, they come back. The real estate is there. So always about keeping money in. There are future trends, as in any sector, when it comes to economic zones, sustainability. A lot of talk on sustainability and green technologies, of course, smart infrastructure, innovation, and adapting to global trade changes. Of course, AI is gonna make a huge impact in this sector specifically. There are many, as I said, 7,000 economic zones plus in the world, And some of the stronger ones, actually the top three, are actually in the UAE. So UAE is basically seen as the reference when it comes to how to develop an economic zone. We are quite lucky in doing so. And number one in the world is actually Jebel Ali. It's actually still the biggest one in the world. And then you have some in Poland. Poland is quite strong in that. You have Panama, Mauritius, China, Cayman, and so on. There are many ways whereby an economic zone is managed. So you'll find them either state-run, private sector-run, mixed public and private sector. Sometimes the ministries themselves run it. So different business models for different economic zones around the world. Many stakeholders. It's like a country in a country, really. In fact, I've written the law, one of the countries in Central Asia, whereby it is literally a country in a country, inclusive of all civil laws. I had to develop their laws whereby one set of boxes of one law printed was 30 kg. So I had to deliver the law in a trolley. So shareholders, investors, financial institutions, employees, local communities, customers, government regulation, media. So as I mentioned, more than 85% or 87% are underutilized of economic zones. A lot of that is due to many elements. Regulatory and governance issues, number one, really. Weak governance structures, lack of transparency, inconsistency, misalignment between local regulations, special incentives, bureaucratic tapes, corruption, mismanagement. Mostly these. Infrastructure deficiencies. So it's an economic zone without roads and power and sea access. So what's the use? A lot of them are very manual still. Environmental and social impact, startup failure. So many don't realize that the norm in startups is failure. So 200 years of statistics show clearly that failure is the norm when it comes to startups. 90% of companies don't survive 3 years. So success is the remote exception. And with that, regulations and society needs to know how to deal with that statistic and manage failure to find successes and enable that to happen. I'll give you an example. In many countries now, shutting down a company is way more expensive than starting it. But if the norm is failure, that's a problem. So I worked with one economic zone, and now the second one is coming, whereby we created a structure for startups, whereby shutting is way cheaper than starting the business. Lack of competitiveness. What's the use of creating an economic zone which cannot compete with the other economic zone in the other city or in the other country? Many governments fail to try and be competitive across the globe to attract companies. Failure of startups. So as I highlighted, 9 out of 10 fail within the first 3 years. Why? Percentage-wise is 42% misleading demand. You think people want it, but you've been misled. 29% is running out of fund and cash. So this is why you cannot spend a lot of money to start with. You have to be cheap, and you have to have enough money to run for 2-3 years, and don't take your dad's and mom's money or your friend's money. That's a big mistake. 23% is the wrong team. And that's sadly is not what gets taught at school and universities, is how to establish a team, how to establish a strong team. I built a school in Dubai called SEZs, whereby we teach entrepreneurship starting age 4. And in that we teach, actually the way we developed our classrooms is that it's always teamwork. Because figuring out how to build a team, communicate, coordinate, find a problem and design a solution is a skill. Is way more important than your skill in mathematics and physics and chemistry and any of other. That skill is for survival moving forward, because everything else AI can do. 90% is tough competition, naturally. If you choose a field that's very competitive and you try to go heads on with competition, there's a good chance you'll fail. Only 10% is pricing or market fit or poor marketing. Can you imagine, huh? Of course, my mission now is to push startups in economic zones and help economic zones be ready to accommodate startups and push for them, because their survival will be in enabling startups. So with that, I'm trying to push on startup-friendly policies, cost-effective licenses, quick business setups, mentoring, flexible offices, zero rentals, marketing support. So a lot of things that economic zones could provide. But on top of all of that, what I'm really keen on is embrace the venture studio model. And I'm gonna say a few things now that will change the way you would do things moving forward. And that is why you should think in venture studio style. What is venture studio? I've done this for what, 25 years now. I had my own VC shop, my own basically venture capital firm, had my own private equity firm, had my own investment bank, and they don't work. What statistically work is venture studios. And that is to use one team, plus minus, to develop 3 to 4 companies at the same time, whereby a company is given a year and a half to 2 years to decide whether to keep it or to kill it. But the idea of having one team multi-venturing is the core of the equation. Why is that? Cost per company becomes way lower. Therefore, a company can survive longer. As I said to you, 9 out of 10 don't survive 3 years, and 27% of the reason is they run out of money. So if you want to keep a company for as long as possible, you cannot put everything on it. You cannot gamble. You cannot put all of your eggs in one basket. Second reason is that the team has to be competent, capable. Otherwise, they cannot run 3 to 4 companies at a time. So any weak member in the team will leave. Third, you learn fast, because everybody has to do everything. I'm marketing in this company, but then I'm financing the other company. And I lead on this company, but then I support in the other company. You learn fast, and you learn from your mistakes fast. So you don't repeat the same mistake across companies. You did a social, Facebook advert in this company, it worked. You do the same in the other companies. You don't have to reinvent. You failed in Instagram in this company, you don't do Instagram in the other companies. Why do waste time? Efficiencies are way, way, way higher. And you have enough money to keep for 3 years. It started in the mid-90s. It's only 25 years or circa 3 years of statistics. And the statistics in that model say that 70% or 7 out of 10 companies would not survive 3 years. Meaning I have 3 companies that statistically would survive more than 3 years versus 1 in the normal startup scene. So my chances are 200% higher than the normal business success rates. So if one team works on 3 to 4 companies for 3 years, and you can change the companies. If some fail earlier, no problem. The next idea. There is a good chance that you get a success in 3 years. So you prepare yourself day one for that business model. As in any business idea, it starts with ideation, MVP. I think probably you've been taught that already. So minimum viable product, and then validation of the product. And then if it works, then you put them in the portfolio, and then you try to scale. But the main idea here is that as you run 3 to 4 companies, once you know that the company is not successful, you kill that idea and you bring in the next idea. And most new ideas come from failed ideas. So you'd be running this company and you'll have something on a side. And then that something on a side becomes the more interesting part of the company. The company fails, you shut it down and you focus on what was interesting. You'd build a company and then you've realized there's a problem. Like you'd be going for example, a supplements business, yeah. Only to come to realize that, oh, the packaging is a great investment because there's no suppliers around. But the supplements business itself was not a good idea. You shut down the supplement business, you go for a packaging business. And that's how good ideas come. They have 30% higher success rates. There is a good chance of 5% achieving unicorn status versus 1% in normal status. Although I'm not a big fan of talking about unicorns or the super entrepreneurs, because I think statistically speaking they are so rare that you shouldn't really bother, and because then you take too much risk for nothing. Just think realistically. If you become a unicorn, great, but don't make it as where you'll be satisfied. Be satisfied if you can feed yourself and your family and be good to your society. That should be more than enough. The investor rates of return is way higher than the average. So the average of the industry around 21% in around 12 years. And this model is circa 55%. It's quite astonishing, to tell you the truth. And most of them exit much faster, actually. And there is a table in here that explains some of that. So time from zero to Series A is in traditional businesses is 56 months, whereby in venture seed is 25 months. Time from zero to seed, 36 versus 10, so on and so forth. So I am pushing economic zones to try and push this business model, because I think a lot of economies could benefit out of this tremendously versus the current business models. This is talking about the B2B. I'll not spend a lot of money and a lot of time, sorry, on this. Just to a couple of things. That's great general information. So 70% of people prefer self-service options on websites. 57% prefer to gather information online instead of interacting with a salesperson. So at times you would wonder if AI will take the job of a lot of salespeople. The answer is definitely yes, because most people actually prefer not to deal with a salesperson. 90% start their purchase journey with an online search. Want to buy anything, shoe, watch, whatever, you'd go with the search first. And the market for B2B marketplaces, there's more than 1,000 coming up in only 2 years. And these keep running and growing year after year. I've created a marketplace myself called Growbal. I've realized that there is as I was doing this for decades, I've realized that there's a gap in the market, and that today, if you want to set up a company anywhere in the world, how would you gather genuine information from economic zones, from authorities? How would you be able to compare which ones do you want? Who can help you actually set up? So today, if I want to go to China, I'm in the UAE. I have no clue on how would I start even. Who can help me? Who can help me that is genuine, not a fraud? Take my money and run away, which happens everywhere in the world. Where can I go to get the right information in a convenient way? So I created this marketplace. So this marketplace, Growbal, actually interfaces entrepreneurs or corporates with service providers and authorities. And the idea is that you'd post your requirements, say, I want to establish a company in China. Agents that serve the market in China, most of which would be certified by the authorities. There will be a check mark that these guys are certified, would come to you and offer their services in a safe environment, whereby payment is actually done through escrow, meaning your money sits in escrow up until you get your service. And if you get your service, then the money goes to the service provider. If you don't get your service, the money goes back to you. So your money is guaranteed. So it faces investors, economic zones, and service providers. I understand that there's a platform here called Handshake that facilitates internships. And I believe we are going on to that next week, I believe. And with that, we'll be offering internship opportunities in B2B sales and marketing, digital marketing, business analytics, content creation, artificial intelligence, and retail marketing. So if you are in any of these, you could post and you'll be predominantly involved in a venture studio whereby you'll drop your studies and come and join me.